Mm,
Oh yeah, get it out now.
I know. I was like, that
And
guy
welcome to
showed up
Night
at some point.
Square. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Night School Out of Character. Today, we're going to be talking about how we leave a legacy. Many of you have probably played multiple characters in different formats of RPG-style games, but we've spent a lot of time in our last couple episodes discussing the things that turn us off. So today, I thought we'd actually spin it into a positive, or what might start as a positive, and talk about how do you make those characters that you play really, really make an impact where they can last from a level 1 as far up as you can get. It's very rare that you get to a level 20 character, but how do you make that character last in a memorable way where people want to play with them? So before we get started, thank you so much for joining us, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So I'm gonna bring it up to you guys. Is there a character that you've ever played that really, really was meaningful to you, or one that you ran across in a game? And what was it about them that made them stand out from other players?
I think my favorite characters, and there's a few, but they all have one thing in common if I really truly care about those characters, is if they have a really meaningful relationship with only one other player character. So, for example, I've played, and I don't think it's ever been like a romantic relationship. It's always been either a sibling or somebody that they've just naturally like traveled with and built a relationship where one of those characters cannot be the same character without each other. And I feel like that is what makes me really fall in love with playing that character, and makes it really exciting. And I want to see what happens when they come back. And if for some reason that character dies or that relationship is no longer there, it's devastating to that. So like that really helps me invest in that. So those
I'm
relationships are really
curious.
important.
I'm curious because you talked about there being another person tied along with them. Do you ever feel like if you're going along in a story and one of those does disappear or takes off or doesn't show up, do you feel like your character can go on without them and still play? Or is it, I give up on this character, I have somebody else?
It's not so much that I give up on that character, but it becomes more of like a background. It becomes part of their background story and like part of their motivations. Like that past character is what drives that character to keep going. So that past relationship is still very much a part of that character, even though that other part of it is not there anymore. So it works really well for story building as well.
What about you, Honda?
For me, I think it's you have to invest in your character and believe in your character, sort of thing, because it's like, if you're not invested in it, if you don't have some kind of background built for them, whether or not anybody else knows about it, whether or not stuff in your background the GM would allow, but it's still something you've created where in your mind, like, that's how you're playing your character. It's that investment makes it real to you, which would make it realer for other people, as opposed if you're just yeah, it's like, what, like, let me roll the dice, I don't care what my character does, just let me roll the dice, sort of aspect. It's that investment you have that your buy-in would create buy-in for other players.
But even apart from that, I know that you've made multiple characters and have even made some where you're like, I would play somebody who did this. You've had people that you've not actually played in a game, but you talk about them. I know that there's an element of over time the backstory would get improved and grow, but I still feel like there's a difference between characters that you enjoy playing and you think this is going to be one of my best characters versus somebody who, they're all going to have backstories. So that's what I'm really looking for is what are those characteristics in one of the people either you've played or you've met that really stand out as that is a kick-ass character, and you want to see them make it to the end? Vic, I know it's a little harder.
I was going to say, I can say selfishly on my end, in my lesser amount of experience, like I'm very attached to the character I'm playing now in our campaign, but that's also the first like long-term character I have. So there's that, like, it's my first.
Mm-hmm. And that is, you're so right, because I remember my first character, or like my first character I ever played, and then my first long-term character, they really were just an extension of myself. Like, I was playing myself in the game. So when things would happen, or if that character was about to die, I was so emotionally invested in it, and it didn't feel real. Like, it was like, no, this can't happen. So you're exactly right. You're always invested in your first character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny that you talk about death, because I think that idea of, did your character leave a legacy in a game, in a fictional game, a fictional story that really has no historical merit, it's not going to live throughout time. I mean, unless this series goes viral and just stays out there forever. A lot of people aren't going to know the story of our characters. So is that idea of, when your character does die, are they still impacting the story afterwards? I wonder if that is actually what leaving a legacy in game is. Mm-hmm. And have you ever encountered that in? I know Kat and Hava, you've played a couple of games, but that idea of, have you ever reached a point where characters do pass away, and you have almost an emotional experience because of it?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, I don't think I've gotten as emotional as Kat's gotten about certain characters, but it does make me feel like I'm a better player than sometimes I give myself credit for. When it's like, characters I've played with y'all for either a short amount of time or a long amount of time, but like the way we talk about them, where it's just like, they're not a real person. It's, this imaginary thing I made up, that we played a couple sessions with or several sessions with, but it's like, still, we talk about them like they're real people, and it's like, that's how I know I'm doing a good job of playing my character, because it's like, I am bringing them to life in a way. It's not just, oh yeah, you were the person that if we needed to pick a lock, you'd pick a lock, and that's all you would do, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond that,
go for it. Well, I was going to say, just to piggyback off of what Havda was saying, whenever we had, so in a past campaign, Havda and I both played characters that we already had like our main story characters, but we built two characters to challenge each other. And it started off as like a joke, where we were playing really difficult characters for ourselves. So for example, my character in that story was super optimistic, very cheerful, cheery, which is not me at all. So that was a little bit more difficult. But in creating these characters, we created such a backstory of why they were such close friends, and like they clung to each other. And it was a very short story arc for my character in that story, where she did end up dying. But I feel like you did such a good job, Havda, in that story of, even after she was gone, your whole purpose was, you have to find her, you have to find out what happened, you had to like figure out like the story. So even though she had died, it felt right for the story because of how you played it. And I think that's what it is knowing when the death of a character is for the good of the story, and not just selfishly wanting to hold on to that character.
I think it's a beautiful moment at times whenever a character does pass in game, and there's almost this hushed silence that falls over the table of what do we do? Because that person usually usually will exit the table or take a moment and just close off. Sometimes there are people who you can tell they don't really care about their character, and right away it's, oh, I'll just start making another character. And
let me roll my dice and create a new character.
well, that can even be a front at times of they don't want to admit how much they care about somebody. And we've experienced that ourselves of having a player who just put up a front of I don't care. And then the moment her character died, and she had been there from one of the very beginnings of our games, it was immediately like she got frantic. She was nervous and just like, well, I don't really care. I don't care as much as you care. Like she kept like just projecting this anxiety at the table, and you could tell that it really hit her. But it also hit the group because it's like, do we try to save this person? I mean, because most of our settings have been in like high fantasy realms, there's resurrection spells, there's temples, there's ways to bring characters back, but it's not guaranteed and it's not easy, and it takes time. And it's almost, do we put the time in to make this character stay longer, or is this the right time to let them go?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually, it's one of the more sketchy areas of how you play, because I know whenever that happens with me, I don't want to talk out on the table and say, hey, you, Carl, you just died. Do you really want me to bring your character back? Like, I don't want to ask them. I have to make the choice. But there's some times where you do make the choice to bring somebody back, and they're furious to be brought back for whatever reason. And you're like, it's those things of like, I don't know if I have the power, even in game, to make a choice for somebody to come back to life.
Yeah. Well, and I think this actually might be one of those times when meta conversations should be maybe not encouraged, but if you are wondering about those kinds of things, having those conversations before the game even starts. Because I know in past campaigns, I have had conversations with people, and they had flat out said, you know what, I think my character is done. I'm really happy with how they've played. And if they die, that's the end, and that's okay. And then, but when you're in a group of, at the time, it was a group of 10, and you're trying to say like, oh, you know, this character, they died, they did a great job, this is how they would have wanted to go. And then somebody comes and heals them. It's like, that was kind of the end of the story. But it's those
but
kinds
they have
of...
a DNR.
Okay, but oddly enough, funny little anecdotal story. So not even an hour ago, one of the games I'm in, we finally got into a place where I think people are starting to fall in love. I always see a turning point in players when they realize, I like this character a lot, and they enjoy the banter and the way people interact, and they start realizing that death is a big scary factor of like, we're going into something, let's not go in half-assed. We want to make sure we're covered. And I've noticed that's happening more, where people are talking like, how do we protect ourselves, because I don't want to lose someone. And we ended up losing 2 people, and they were fine to make new characters, but we've all started to like band together more of like, we've got to protect this. And they actually sent a Facebook Messenger saying, we should probably have like a meeting where we discuss everybody's like will options of like what. And I laughed, because I was like, this is real true. Like, if I go down, DNR, like, do not resuscitate me, or do not, like, I want to make sure that those are clear expectations at the table. And I think it's valid to do even in game, not even just meta.
That's true.
Just sit down at a table and be like, hey guys, and like to say that, like, you know, if I go down in this, I don't want you to bring me back. Just say that as a character is doable as well.
Yeah. That's fair. I guess I had never really thought about doing it in character, but that would make so much sense because you do that in real life.
Right.
Don't bring me back to life.
So I was going to say, well, also, like, when it comes to questing, like, you know, if you are trying to IRL it, it's like, you know, my character would be, if something happens to me, I want you to have this, I want you to have this, you know, it's like you would almost have a character will, you know, sort of thing.
Now I'm excited.
Oh, tonight's the night.
Where's Calnus's will? We gotta find that.
But I'm curious, Vic, because you haven't actually experienced a character death in story, kind of.
Yet.
but yeah, it's coming. But seriously, like, how do you feel as an
Spoiler.
outsider? Well, no,
It's already out.
it's already out. No, but seriously, like, as a new person coming in, how do you feel about the idea of a character dying? Is it nothing yet? Does it, like, are you like numb to it?
Well, I think having this conversation and having had bits and pieces of it at other times, like, it's definitely on my mind, but I'm not sure yet in terms of, like, I think I'm probably in denial. Like, I think that's where I'm at in terms of, like, this is real, but no, I'm gonna go that, sorry, Kat, I'm going that optimistic, that's not gonna happen.
She was just dreaming.
But a
But
big
it
chunk of it, I think that is you have to put in the time
Mhm.
and that investment. It's the same as when you're reading a really good book and you get so invested, and then in the flip of a page, they
Mhm.
set it up so perfectly that you would be surprised with, and then that character died, and it drains you. I've had many books where I've thrown the book across the room, and it's like I can't,
Mhm.
and then I go back and I get it and I continue, but
Right.
but it's because I put so much time in falling in love with that character. To lose them is really hard.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's as we go on with this quest and our characters, like, I think we get closer and closer to them and, like, have more and more of an attachment to them. So it's like kind of like a little niggling thought in the back of my mind, but it's also like, no, I'm in denial. Like, nope. But
Didn't happen.
having the conversation and the thoughts about it, like, definitely opens my mind to, okay, this is something to think about. Okay, this is something to think about. It's a good conversation to have.
So in a morbid stance, if you were to go out as one of your favorite characters, whoever they are, is there some, like, how much would you want the party or the group playing to honor your character, or would you want it at all? Like, because in many groups, that's how they kind of grieve over a loss, is they will have some kind of funeral rite, or they'll have words spoken, or they'll do something to honor that person. But there are some people who absolutely, they just leave the body and they walk away, and they're like, well, that person's down, let's keep moving. So for you, if you were to go out, is there something you would definitely want, or you would be happy to have happen?
I would hope that the friendships that Kelness had struck up would have had, while it was not over a long period of time, some sort of small impact. What like, in talking about this and thinking about things that have happened and things that have been told to each of our characters individually, there haven't been opportunities. Like, I have a list of things that, like, I know this and these people don't know this, and there hasn't been that opportunity to get to share those things with them. So I don't know, as much as they're, like, friends and they've banded together, like, realistically they've been through a lot, but in a short amount of time. So how much impact did she really have on them? And she never had that chance to share, like, hey, this is what I want to do. Like, this is
Mhm.
something that's important to me to get done, because it just hasn't naturally come up yet. So I would hope that there would be a sadness, like, oh no, and then some sort of, like, well, we have to keep going. But I don't know how they would carry their memory of her with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As a
I know,
driving force or whatever.
Currently, one of the games that I'm playing in, I'm playing a bard. And for those of you who may not know, I am a music teacher, so that's my day profession. And so I absolutely enjoy playing this bard character. which seems almost stereotypical of like, well, of course he would be playing this. But what I've enjoyed, haven't really enjoyed it, but it's been a nice gift, is every time one of our players falls and dies, in game, I immediately start spending time like, oh, well, you notice my character is off on the side and writing things down or is humming. And then at the end of the session, I actually record myself and I make a ballad for that character of how they went down. And it's always like, when we get back to the tavern, this is the song that I sing, and I send it to them. So that there is, even though it's one character and they might not have been alive for a long time, I want to immortalize them with, you were seen, we were aware of you, you made an impact, and here's your farewell.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like my small gift every time someone goes down. That's what I like to do in that situation.
That's nice. I like
think
that.
you do that well as a GM too.
Well, I actually appreciate that. I feel like as a GM, it is your duty to transition people from character to character and to ease them out of grief, because I've seen many people crumble because they even the fear of it's going to happen. I can tell it's going to happen today, and we haven't started the session. They're just panicking, and they're trying to come up with, this is how I'm going to react. And I know, just as a human, you don't know how you're going to react until it happens.
No, you
can't
don't.
plan that.
Because in the past, when I've played a character, when I know that my character is in a terrible situation and I had weeks or even months to mentally prepare myself, when it actually did come to the point where that character went down and had to be actually resurrected, I was a wreck. And there was no way I could have prepared myself for that. And I think just kind of seeing the way that the rest of the players rallied and tried to bring those characters back, because the way that in that campaign, the way that Michael, you did the resurrection, is they had to almost convince the soul to come back. Like you had to like make a verbal plea or some kind of gift or something. And just hearing that is such a good way of kind of showing the legacy that maybe you didn't know was there already. And I really liked that. So that's really emotional too.
Well, yeah, and I didn't get to that point with like one of my characters, but it was a point with one where it's like, I'm trying to sacrifice for the betterment of the group, but then to see like certain characters like not want to let me do that, it's like, okay, like, well, what is your attachment to me? Like, is this something, superficial, or do you really care about my character and like you were trying your darndest to like save my character?
Yeah. Those legacies, man, they mess with you. Mess with your emotions.
I will say, as a GM, some of my favorite moments where I get to step in and I get to talk are those farewell moments of how do we send off a character in a memorable way that is going to, it's almost cinematic. It's like I try to find ways of how can we stop time and really look at this. Honestly, I can tell you my favorite one that we've ever encountered that I just like, to this day, it's one of my favorite. I still have the drawing in my room, in my office, is one of our characters who just, she really wasn't that great at playing the game, but she had so much passion. And when she died, she had built this lovely romantic relationship with another character. And we sent her off, was the butterflies. Just her body breaking down into these like moonlit butterflies and just like scattering. And it was just the way that it happened. I was like, and there's no way I could save you without just being Deus Ex Machina, just coming up and be like, you're back, you're fine. And I don't like doing that. I feel like it's a cop-out. It makes the game have no consequences and you feel like you can do whatever you want. She was going to die. There was nothing I could do. But I was like, this is exactly how I could send you off and make you still beautiful, impactful. And I just watching her, the player, see what was happening and hear the conversation, I think that was the end when she gave me a huge hug at the end and like was like, thank you so much. That was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's those kind of moments I'm like, all right, this is how powerful this game can be. And no one really died. It was the character. It was imagination.
Mm-hmm. But it becomes real. Like it becomes such, like you've invested so much time and you get to spend this time with your friends. And I know typically in a party, I'm not even going to say typically, sometimes in a party, when your character dies, you are able to create a new character and kind of finish out the story. So like you still have that. For that particular instance, we were so close to the end of the campaign, it didn't make sense for her to create a new character because there was maybe one more session we were going to have. And that was a little bit harder too, because it was like, oh, I've had this time with these people that I really care about. And it's been such a consistent way to hang out with them and just kind of fellowship with them. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you guys will see each other next week. And that was hard. And I feel like that made it a little bit, not more emotional, but it was a little bit of a different kind of sadness mixed in with saying farewell to a character.
What was really hard about that particular one is the character in question started off with us way down, like at the very beginning. I think we were level 3, and she got all the way up to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a long progression over 2 years that she had built so much and she had grown so. And then, like you said, we got to the last few sessions. I think we had the 2 plan. And I was like, we're going to finish this in 2. It's going to happen. And then she died. And it was like, just like you said, I can't feasibly make a reason for you to be with this group. And all of a sudden y'all are working together for this thing y'all been working on since 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had no reason to come back. And I remember even saying, like, you're welcome to join us and just watch. Like, we want you to be a part of it and see it.
Yeah.
But there was like, you didn't make it. And that was the hard part for me, of trying to say, you did not make it to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine if you were playing D&D based off of like arcade rules, and you have a certain number of tokens that you put in, you have that many lives, and you get to the final boss and you die. You're done. You have to start over. You can't, I mean, it's that consequence level of, I might not make it,
mm-hmm.
which really, really kills people.
Yeah. But I feel, again, Havda, you did a really good job of carrying her memory through the character you were playing at the time by talking about that character even after she had passed. And at the very end, you made part of your like closing out story, part of it was about that character. So you, like, again, you do such a good job of immortalizing these characters and making us remember them. So you're a really good storyteller in that.
Well, I mean, that character like just came together so beautifully just because I got to create him in the world that, you know, we had already been playing him for, you know, over a year and a half. But it was the fact that, you know, I'm good friends with this player, but also like I've seen how the character's grown, you know, with you know my other character. But it is that it's like, you know, she did a lot, you know, in game and character wise to, it's like, you know, something like that. It's like, yeah, it's like it does need to be remembered. Mm-hmm. And sort of the way Vasquez described, you know, her passing, you know, was great in that moment. But it is one of those things where it's like, you know, it's like, no, your character did make an impact, even if you don't feel it, you know, they did, you know. Mm-hmm. For good or bad, you know, wherever you were doing, you know, it's like it's memorable.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it can be memorable, and I know we've done it a couple of times, and I've always been shocked by what we actually get is final words. So it's my tradition that that anytime you go out, even though you could have been unconscious and you did your death saves, and it's like you really are not there, consciously to be able to say anything, I will give you the foresight to be like, I wake up just so I can hear you say something. Like, how are you going out? To give you that control of, you get the last say in how you go down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ranged from people being just like finger birds to the air and like, I'm just going to send you off, to take me now. Like, it's there are people that are just like, well, I can't do anything about it. And some will even do nonverbal. They're like, I don't say anything. I just shed one tear. It's like, oh my gosh, that is, it's hard to see how people accept death.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a bad humble brag, but yeah, thinking like for some of my last words, I was like, I do a really good job at those.
You do. Well, and it's not
But
even
a lot of practice.
How many last words have you had?
You haven't died
No,
that
to say
much.
like character wise, like
No, but even like without dying, like if like for example, Ragnar. So in our last campaign,
and that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That character didn't die, but he left, and he was like essentially exiting the campaign. And the last words that you said to to my character was one of the most beautiful gameplay moments I've ever encountered. And I loved it. But your character wasn't dying, but it was a final last words.
Do you remember what they were?
You know
Yes.
where I'll be.
Oh.
Aw.
For me,
I know you have a
as
tattoo of that.
as a visual person, as a visual person, English, come on. As an amateur artist, I like immortalizing those moments. So like, for instance, we talked about the butterfly moment, and that particular moment of the doors closing and you being banished from the realm that everybody else was in, and it was self-banishment. And hearing those words, it's like those things I always have to immediately stop. And it's like, I have to draw this down. I have to, because I don't want to forget this. And they are really, really powerful moments, but they're always when somebody is leaving for good.
Yeah.
Which, how frustrating can that be? Could you imagine if your characters you're playing right now have to leave at some point and don't make it to the end of the story?
I mean, it's a balance between, as if it's good for the story, okay, but then there's also the part of it where it's like, no, like I selfishly, of course, I don't want my character to die. Like I want this character to make it to the end. There's definitely a balance, and depending on where we are in the story, part of it might be higher than the other.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I've definitely, like with any character, like I had that investment in them, but it is one of those things where it's like, you know, as long as they leave serving a purpose, you know, it's a little bit easier to swallow. But still, it is one of those things where it's like, oh, like if I, you know, from a more like selfish person standpoint, it's like, well, if I just got to this level, I could have done this, and like that would have been neat to try, you know, from like a gameplay mechanic wise. But it's like, character wise, if they're leaving on a high note, you know, it's satisfying enough for me.
Well, I don't want any of y'all to leave the campaign yet, so don't stress out about that
Yeah,
yet.
I know. I was like, I'm having a little bit of anxiety right now.
But honestly, I would love, I mean, it's, even though I wouldn't be part of anybody's campaign, I would love to be able to know any of our viewers, like, what are your favorite ways you've ever gone out? Did you ever have a character moment that's similar to what we're talking about, where you made a lot of investment in them and they reached a point where they had to exit? Did you fight it? Did you hope that other people were going to try and save you? And worse, what if you want to be saved and they won't do it?
Oh.
The amount of times that I'm like, you have the power. We have a healer. This is the one time we have a healer in the party. And they won't heal me. Like, those moments are so aggravating because you're like, I don't want to say I'm making a character yet. I want to wait this out and see. But you don't have the power because you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, if you have those moments, put them in the comment box below and let us know, because the joyous part about this is you do have those memories of the characters you've made, and sometimes they're throwaway characters and you just have funny moments where you're like, I remember when we did that that one shot and I was this person. I remember when that person had a very comical voice and I couldn't stop laughing so hard. Like there's those moments, but they far are minimalized by the ones of, I remember whenever we played that game and this person changed everything for me. And you know that character is going down in your Hall of Fame of best characters.
Yeah. Hall of Fame of best characters. I like that.
And the award ceremony.
Let's do it. Do we get a star? Like a
League of Legends, but I think that's trademark.
Yeah, no. Maybe not.
But you know what? Let us
give
know
out
your
Night
favorite character
Schoolies.
moments. Night Schoolies. Seriously though, let us know your favorite character moments below, and make sure if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. We are really trying hard to make sure that we can give you content that you can follow and that you can interact with, because if you have a topic that you'd like to hear discussed on another episode of Out of Character, we would love to hear from you. So till then, we'll see you next time.